y'all, I'm Cece, and despite what my upload schedule this year might imply, I have actually been reading a lot more consistently. So today I'm here to chat about my 2025 reading statistics, books that made me cry versus books that made me laugh, my most surprising read versus my most disappointing read, and which bookish podcast you can find me on hyping all of my faves if this video simply does not deliver enough of my unhinged reading thoughts to you at this time. This is the mid-year book Freakout tag, Problems of a Book Nerd 2025 edition. Well, y'all, it has been another weird apocalyptic year. I turned 30, which is cool. It is harder to summon a 30, flirty, and thriving mindset when the world is so dystopian, and I'm kind of trying not to blame Jennifer Garner right now for setting up unrealistic expectations. I used to do this tag every single year, and I have actually really missed it. I do, however, want to get into some quick statistics before we jump into the questions themselves, because I love statistics so much, so very, very much, but also because I haven't done any wrap-up so far this year, which means you all don't know that much about the books I've actually read. So if you will indulge me briefly for just a few minutes, let's talk reading statistics. All right, by the numbers, in 2025 so far, I have read a grand total of 26 books. That works out to usually reading about 4 books a month, except for March, where I only read 2 books a month because I was busy turning 30, and then when I went a little overboard in May and read 8 books. So that kind of made up for it. As far as formats, I have been reading mostly from Libby, which does give me the opportunity to talk about my very exciting project. Book Lounge by Libby is the newly rebranded official podcast of Libby, the library reading app, and I am one of the guest hosts of this first newly rebranded season. There are 10 episodes total full of discussions about books and the state of reading today. There are interviews with authors, and every single episode features a recommendation portion where me or some other bookish influencers tell you all about books we think you should be reading. The link for the podcast is going to be down in the description below, but you can listen to Book Lounge anywhere that you listen to your podcasts regularly. Plus, there are also video versions available on Libby's YouTube channel, so if you want to check that out, that's just if you want to be able to see our beautiful faces at the same time. All 10 episodes of the first season are available now, and that includes episodes on topics like pride, book bans, summer reading for kids and for adults. We have an episode prepping for Hispanic Heritage Month where we talk books by Latinx authors. We also have an episode talking about Indigenous authors. There's an episode about graphic novels. Basically, I think there's something for everyone, so please check out Book Lounge. Like I said, all of the links will be in the description below. Months and months before I even got, approached with the opportunity to be a part of the podcast, I was using Libby pretty exclusively for my reading, so that just kind of worked out for me. Back to formats, except for 2 books that I bought and read physically, these 2 books right here, every single other book of the 26 I read on Libby. So that means 13 ebooks, 10 audiobooks, those 2 physical books, and then 1 book I did a tandem read for. So I had a physical copy of this book, but I looked at it while I listened to the audiobook from Libby. If you've been here for a while, then my audiobook numbers are probably pretty shocking, because I have pretty famously said that due to audio processing issues, I can't actually pay attention to audiobooks despite how much I might want to. However, that bitch wasn't medicated for ADHD. So things are looking up. My age group mix is pretty predictable. I read 14 adult books, 11 YA books, and then 1 lonely but very adorable middle grade book. As far as genres, my most read genre by a fair margin, once again, is horror. I read 10 books that were horror. My next biggest category would be 6 contemporary fiction books. 5 of these were mysteries or thrillers. I read 3 romances, and then I read 1 fantasy and 1 sci-fi. sci-fi or dystopian, depending on how specific you want to get with subgenres. My ratings fall kind of all over the map this year, so I won't go into it too much, but you can see that overall, it's been pretty good. I've been enjoying most of the things I read. The rating that I've handed out the most often is 4 out of 5 stars, but there are only 3 books that I've finished this year that I rated below 3 stars. I specify books that I've finished because this year, if I've been reading a book and not liking it, then I just DNF it. I decide I'm not going to finish it, and if I don't finish a book, I don't rate it. Why did I finish these books with lower ratings? Because I had hope in the universe for a brief moment, and that hope was obviously misplaced. I do consider a 4-star or above a book I would highly recommend, so even though there have been some forgettable books and some genuinely bad books, I have wound up with, I think, 14 new books on my shelves, in my reading history, whatever, that I want to be able to hype and discuss and recommend, and I think that's a pretty good number. Most of these books were from authors I had never read from before. I did read 4 books from authors that I've read from in the past, those 4 authors being Kate Alice Marshall, Meryl Wilsner, Shirley Jackson, and Suzanne Collins. Release date-wise, most of these are fairly new. My earliest book is from 1962. That's because I read one classic, We've Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Shout out to my queen, Shirley Jackson. But after that, I had 3 books that were published in the 2010s, a couple books from 2020 and 2021, and then all the other books have been from the last few years. My newest, most recent book is a 2025 release, so I've read one 2025 release. As far as a page count breakdown, I'm looking at my notes for this one. According to Storygraph, with the 26 books I read, that works out to reading 4,442 pages and then 111.58 hours, or if we forget about that time thing, because let's be real, I listened to most of these audiobooks on at least 1.75 speed, that works out to be 8,161 pages across the whole lot. In terms of representation and diversity across my books, these are numbers that I keep track of for myself to keep me accountable, but also just so that I know when I'm talking about books throughout the rest of my channel. And this is a channel that's mostly about queer books, so let's talk about that first. 15 of these books feature a main character or characters that are part of the LGBTQIA+ community. I believe 12 of these books were by authors of color, and that all those books featured one or more BIPOC protagonists. 7 of these books had disabled main characters. I'm using disabled as a umbrella term to include things like physical disability, mental illness, neurodivergency. Even with this, the number 7 is a little fiddly, mostly because I would argue that there are a bunch more of these books that I read that feature main characters who are dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, any number of these things, but those things are never discussed by the narrative, and I wasn't told by the character themselves, so I'm not going to include them in this number. A little fun fact number, 9 of these books that I've read this year have been debuts of some kind for the author, and to loop it back around to Book Lounge, I have talked about a total of 6 of these books in some episode of Book Lounge this first season. I'm not going to tell you which 6 books. You can find that out for yourself, but I will tell you which episodes you can listen to find these specific recommendations. So if you want to listen to the Pride episode, the Beach Reads episode, the graphic novel episode, or the Native Reads Indigenous Authors episode, those are all episodes where I discuss one of the 26 books that I read this year. And then I have one more fun fact for you that is also kind of a sneak peek into my 2025 haul. Since reading digital versions of these books, I wound up buying physical versions of 13 of them, and I am planning on still buying a few more in the future. Here are the ones that have wound up in my physical collection so far since reading them digitally. Alright, that is it for stats. Those are numbers. That gives you kind of a look into the 26 books that I've read. I feel like I just gave you numbers, and now we're doing like superlatives, like best dressed. I guess best dressed would be best cover. There kind of is a question like that. Now, let's go ahead and talk about some of these questions. Question number 1. What is the best book you've read so far this year? I've said it before, I'll say it again. It is wild how much this tag comes out swinging to immediately demand a fave, but I do have one. And it's Listen to Your Sister by Nina Biel. This is a new release. It came out a couple of months ago. and it is the eldest daughter trauma horror novel. As an eldest daughter, I think I experienced the full spectrum of rage while reading this book, but also I kind of couldn't help but laugh every single time one of these three assholes decided to break the tension again by bringing up another SpongeBob reference. I absolutely don't think that this book will be for everybody. I think that some people are gonna have issues with pacing or think that it's a little wonky, but as a 4-part structure, it worked really well for me. These three siblings and their love for one another is amazing. The way that this book depicts the bigger action sequences is wild. And also, I'm obsessed with the way that childhood trauma gets kind of peeled back layer by layer as we are dealing with, I mean, we don't really know what seem to be kind of like eldritch beings. I cannot possibly say enough good stuff. This book was phenomenal. It was perfect for me, and it has, so many sticky tabs from when I got a physical version because it was worth the love. Question number 2, what is the best sequel you've read so far this year? The real answer to this is nothing, because I have not read a sequel in 1,000,000 years. I can offer a prequel, but best only works in this scenario because it's the only one on the list, and that would be The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I listened to this audiobook and I spent every single page longing to beat Coriolanus Snow to death with hammers. Anyway, I shouldn't keep complaining. I've read 50 pages of Sunrise on the Reaping, and it is already a better book in every measure. So how about we just count Sunrise on the Reaping for this instead of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, because 50 pages trumps this entire mess. That's not necessarily a knock on, the writing of the book, by the way. I mean, it says really interesting and very true things about fascism and control and propaganda. I just hate Coriolanus with a white-hot passion, and it made reading this book terrible. And listening to Santino Fontana's sped-up voice did not help. Question number 3, what is a new release you haven't read yet, but you really want to? Well, there are a whole bunch that I talked about in my anticipated releases video, if you want to check that out. From that list, I'm really hoping to get to The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling sometime soon. I have the audiobook on hold through Libby. Same goes for Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. I do have a physical copy of this. It's inaccessible. I want to try to do a tandem read of Gifted and Talented. And I just got a copy of Coffee Shop in an Alternate Universe by C.B. Lee. Because they were up here in Seattle doing an event, so I picked this up at the event, it's signed and everything. I'm so excited, and I really, really want to get to this now that I have a copy. All right, question number 4. What is your most anticipated release for the second half of this year? I had this question written out, and then I went out and bought a book. Oops. So the original answer to this question was, the Raven Boys graphic novel. This is the new graphic novel adaptation of the first book in the Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. This is adapted by Stephanie Williams and illustrated by Sass Milich. I have already had some pretty extreme adaptational concerns for this graphic novel as early images have been coming out. Not little nitpicks, foundational thematic issues. However, I still really love the art style and I love seeing these characters depicted, so this has been my most anticipated release. I now have it. I haven't read it yet because now I'm a little afraid. We'll see how this goes. I think the decision to have Gansey wearing glasses all the time is bold, but worth it for the panel that I have seen where Blue is trying Gansey's glasses on. Cutest thing ever. So if I had to pick one that I don't already have a copy of, it would be You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White. This is Andrew's adult debut. It's adult horror. It sounds extremely fucked up, if we're being honest. But it also sounds phenomenally up my alley. Hell Followed With Us was Andrew's, I think, YA debut, and it was my favorite book that I read last year. This sounds absolutely wild, and it is coming out in September, so it might already be out by the time you're seeing this video. If it is, and you like body horror and trans horror, then maybe check it out. I think it's probably gonna scar me, but I think it's gonna be amazing. Number 5, what is the biggest disappointment you have read so far this year. First, I want to qualify that most disappointing is different from least favorite. Disappointed means I had expectations, and for whatever reason, this book failed to meet them. And I cannot think of a better example of a disappointing book than Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. It was billed as a conversion camp, like, gay trauma rebellion type book. I remember getting a lot of vibes of like, but I'm a cheerleader if there were monsters involved, you know? And I've had this book on my list for years of books that sound so incredibly up my alley, it's a little stalkery. And then imagine my surprise when I go and I check out the audiobook and it's narrated by Mara Wilson. It's Matilda, if you don't know, by the way. And then I found out that the main character's autistic. Like, in every way, this book hits all of the things. Except the amount of time that this book spends at the conversion camp is minuscule. And it does seem crazy, coming from a lesbian from Utah to request more conversion camp in a story, I'm sure. But, like, that was the main publicity push, and it was just not the central part of the story, and it made the pacing of the rest of the book bizarre. The body horror felt distant, so it didn't really have, like, an impact on me in any way, and I swear to God, I had to check 4 separate times to make sure that this was marketed as an adult release and not a YA release. I don't understand how that happened. Anyway, this is not the lowest rated book that I have read this year. I think that honor goes to Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. I really hated that book, but it is absolutely the book that I have read this year so far that made me the angriest. Every single note that I have about Camp Damascus on my Notion board just deteriorates into a grumpy little rant. I just imagine if they made But I'm a Cheerleader, except they don't get to the conversion camp until over halfway through the movie. That's what it felt like. If that's the plot, it's fine. Question number 6, what is the biggest surprise that you've read so far this year? So for this question, originally I was maybe going to go with Hemlock Islands by Kelly Armstrong, because I picked this book up completely at random through my library, and then it wound up really impressing me. However, as much as I liked this book, I want to talk about The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson, because I think this is the first audiobook I have ever given 5 stars to. And I think that is a pretty impressive accomplishment. This is a modern retelling of Stephen King's Carrie. It is about a girl who is basically outed as being biracial in the middle of a deeply racist small town, and how things kind of spiral out of control after that. Because it's a retelling of Carrie, it's told in like a case file format. So at the very beginning, we know that something horrible happened at prom, and throughout the book, we're just building up all of these different perspectives to find out what happened. And the audiobook for this book has a full cast narration that is incredible. I really like the original Carrie. I like Stephen King books. I like retellings a lot. And then this year, I've been learning to love audiobooks again. This elevated Carrie as a story to completely new levels. It redefined my standards for what a retelling should be and should be capable of doing, and it got me from liking audiobooks to falling back in love with them. So I cannot think of higher praise to give this book. It is absolutely incredible. I'm so glad that I listened to this. I encourage you, if you listen to audiobooks, to also give this a listen. Question number 7. Do you have a new favorite author? And that can be a debut author or just an author who is new to you. Since I had that little fun fact earlier about how many debuts I read this year, I'm gonna kind of give you an answer for both. I want to real fast shout out again Nina Viel, because it is incredible that this is a debut. Like, it just keeps blowing my mind that this is the story we got as a debut. The level of writing and skill, the mastery over character voice, incredible. Also, through working on this, that's how I found out that The Wicker King was Kay Ancrum's debut. What? I don't understand how these were debuts. I'm going to be thinking about them for the next 100 years, possibly. And then as far as an author who is just new to me, I want to shout out Not My Problem by Kira Smith. This was Kira's follow-up to the Falling in Love montage. I remember that one getting a lot of attention and hype. I have a copy of the Falling in Love montage. This was delightful. I laughed all the way through it. It was so heartfelt and lovely. This is another one where I feel like the character voices were just so incredibly well done that I'm still thinking about it, and I think that that is what makes, like, favorite authors to me. Authors who can really capture characters that are so layered and interesting and funny and flawed. Delightful. Question number 8. Who is your newest fictional crush? London from Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly is I just think they're neat, okay? If I was an in-universe viewer of the cooking reality show that they're competing in, I would have been making thirst trap compilations and edits on TikTok. Guaranteed. And you know what? Bring Dahlia too. New fave couple. I love them. They deserve each other, and I would really like to just be there for their next Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again hotel room date, if that's possible. Also, not to be extremely gay and specific, but in the audiobook for The Sundown Motel, which is a book by Simone St. James, there is a side character named Heather, and the voice that the audiobook narrator, Brittany Presley, does for Heather, it had me in a state for reasons I still don't understand. Like, lesbianism had me scrolling through Libby at 3 a.m. in a mad haze, just going through Brittany's entire audiobook history. Question number 9, who is your newest favorite character or characters? I think the earliest that a character got added to this list would be Kavi from Not My Problem. I think it was like page 3 or 4 after he appeared that I started making frantic notes in my ebook copy to be like, who is this majestic being? Here, let me read my actual note. Okay, I copied this over directly from my notes in Libby. This is the first scene in which Kavi appears. Oh my god, he's a golden retriever, an angel child, happy and friendly, and so very ready to support you. And you know what? I was right. And he just kept getting more like that. He was in fact a golden retriever, and I would do anything for him. Also, shout out to Kala from Listen to Your Sister, Grace from Cleat Cute, and Jeremy from The Lost Story. Oh lord, was that character my kind of guy. In like a I want to shrink him down and put him in my pocket kind of way. And that is the ultimate way to get to me. Question number 10. What is a book that made you cry? I have a whole vlog about this because at the beginning of this year I was going through it, and so every single book I read in January had me in little crying fits. If that's something you're interested in, I think the one that had me like the most out of sorts was probably the Luis Ortega Survival Club by Sonora Reyes. I think I cried for like half an hour after I finished this book, and it like there are multiple times in that vlog that I have to stop and take a break to think about myself. But like I said, I was also kind of going through it. I think by the time I got to Gay the Prey Away, I was back to like regular levels of crying, but I need you to understand that that's still regular levels of crying for me. And that means a lot of crying. Anyway, books that made me cry when I wasn't having some kind of other emotional breakdown. Love and Other Disasters made me cry in the absolute happiest of ways. And then I got teary-eyed for really, like, similar reasons during Ready When You Are by Gary Lonesborough, and then kind of during The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. I really love love. So if people can just make their love happen, I feel very happy for them, and I'm often overwhelmed. Question number 11. What is a book that made you happy? Let's talk about Not My Problem again. I laughed out loud an embarrassing number of times reading this book, and I haven't seen, like, a lot of Dairy Girls, but based on the amount that I have seen of that, and the experience of reading this book. I feel that if you enjoy the humor and the group dynamics of that show, you will really, really like the writing style of Not My Problem, and you will enjoy this story. This, by the way, is a YA contemporary about an Irish teenager who is having a really hard time at school right now, but she is not telling anybody about it. And then she winds up involved in this sort of business enterprise where she does favors for other people in her school. She does a favor for them, they owe her a favor, and it becomes this whole transactional thing that crosses the entire school, and of course, you know, her closed-off life gets opened up, she gets to meet a bunch of people that she normally wouldn't interact with, and it's wonderful. And then one I haven't talked about as much, but that I still really loved, it was the one middle grade book that I read. Camp Prodigy, this is by Caroline Palmer. I live for summer camp books. There were, 3 summer camp books alone on this list of 26, and this was beyond wholesome. It is about friendship and music and passion, gender, and being able to be yourself. And even when I cried, it was because I was thinking about how kids now get to read books like this one, as long as we keep on fighting for them. Question 12. What is your favorite post or project so far this year? I mean, I know I already talked about it, but it's Book Lounge! It's literally wild to me that I got to work with Libby. And then on top of that, every single person involved in the project is amazing too. Like, Joe is so nice, he's so on top of everything, and he does an amazing job with, like, everything he does, but especially I cannot imagine trying to wrangle all of us, trying to get us into some kind of coherent schedule, getting this whole thing done. And then it's also amazing because I got to record episodes of this podcast with people that I've known online for years, and then also people that I got to meet for the very first time. Anyway, please watch it, listen to it, send it to your friends. I'm in 7 of the 10 episodes, and prep work is already going on for season 2, so engagement means a lot in general, but it would be especially amazing if you just wanted to, like, give it a listen, see what we're talking about. Question 13. What is the most beautiful book you've bought or received so far this year? I'm particularly fond of a couple of books I was sent earlier this year. I think these were both sent by Candlewick. I just think the covers are gorgeous, and those are And the Trees Stare Back. This is by Gigi Griffiths. And the other one is Skip Shock by Caroline O'Donoghue. As far as In the Trees Stare Back, I love these colors. I think it's so dynamic and pretty. And then Skip Shock is just like, I love the metallic detailing on it. They're both really nice. And then the most beautiful one that I bought, I want to talk about Gay the Pray Away by Natalie Nadwas. I wanted to shout this one out because it got this brand new gorgeous cover for its wide release last year, and I am always a sucker for girls on the cover holding hands. It gives me big emotions, but on top of that, the inciting incident of this book is the main character seeing a sapphic book at the library for the first time. And it kind of cracks her whole world in half, and it leads her to the realization that not only does she like girls, the homeschooling community that she is a part of is actually a cult. So this book is literally about how the power of sapphic lit can save and change your entire life, and it was at least partially inspired by the author's own experiences when she got the opportunity to narrate the One Last Stop audiobook. So it's just a really cool thing where sapphic people are just inspiring one another to be themselves, and queer people in community, and it makes the girls holding hands on the cover even more special. Question number 14, what are some books that you want to read by the end of this year? My goals at this point are limited because of demand avoidance issues. I feel like every time I rank books really high priority, my brain kicks in and is like, the demand is too high, you don't want to do that. Currently, I'm hoping to maybe read a couple more of the anticipated releases that I covered in my video, and then I'm hoping to finish some of the books that I'm currently reading right now that have been put on hold or on pause for one reason or another. So I'd really love to finish the audiobook for Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyan. I was listening to this. The audiobook got taken back by Libby completely fairly, and I'm just waiting for the hold to come back through again. That's also the case for Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. I am waiting anxiously to be able to finish reading that book. Oh, and I want to be able to finish reading Sunrise on the Reaping, obviously, before the end of the year. And finally, question 15, any anticipated adaptations for the rest of this year? So this is like a bonus question. It's included on some people's lists and not included on some others. I decided to include it because I have a specific adaptation that I wanted to be able to talk about, and this just gives me the opportunity to do that. Also, I do what I want. This is my channel, and it's my video you're watching. And hopefully, you will also be watching the upcoming adaptation of I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. It is adapted from the book of the same name, and the wide release of the movie is happening this November. This book was kind of a huge shift in publishing in 2019 when it was released, because non-binary books by non-binary authors were just in a very different place support-wise from the publishing industry and from, I don't know, society. And I think the publication of I Wish You All the Best was one of those big things that got us to where we are now, which is, I'm not saying we're done fighting by any means. We have so much more fighting left to do, but I am saying that this book is a big part of why we get bestsellers lists now that include 3 or 4 or even more trans and non-binary authors, because that just was not the reality of publishing in 2019. I haven't had the chance to see the full movie yet. I will say that I got emotional just watching the trailer, which I kind of knew would happen. I'm sitting there, I'm watching the trailer, I'm feeling emotional, like all my big emotions are bubbling in my chest, and then it flashes up on screen by New York Times bestselling author Mason Deaver, and I just like fully broke down into tears. This book is just so meaningful to me. It's meaningful, I think, to our community. I love Mason, and I am so thrilled that they're getting this opportunity. Plus, I think that the movie looks like it's going to be a really emotional journey. So, if you're interested, and you haven't read I Wish You All the Best yet, it's a brilliant YA contemporary about a non-binary kid who is unfortunately thrown out of their home when they come out to their parents, but they get the opportunity to kind of start fresh the second half of their senior year when they go to live with their estranged sister instead. It's a wonderful romance. It's a beautiful story about mental health and friendship and support. And I can't believe that there's gonna be a movie. And Cole Sprouse is in it. That's wild. There are other adaptations, like upcoming adaptations that I'm really looking forward to. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein and The Long Walk, to name a couple. Also, every single project that Mike Flanagan is currently working on. Like, you know, hey-oh, speaking of Carrie. But I just thought that I Wish You All the Best deserved a special shout-out because it's special shout-out worthy to me. Alright, y'all, we did it. Those are all of the questions and all of the stats that I wanted to share. If you liked watching this video, consider giving it a like and leaving a comment. And hey, if you're not sure what to comment on, let me give you a quick prompt. Please tell me about the last book that you fell absolutely head over heels in love with. It doesn't matter how long ago you read it or if it's a book that you're reading right now. I just really want to hear about books that made y'all passionate, because that is what has been interesting me. That is what gets my brain focused and wanting to read more stories. So share those down below. Also, please let me know if there are any books that I talked about in today's video that you want to hear more about. That'll really help when I am kind of prioritizing and planning out some kind of wrap-up that doesn't wind up feature length. Some of these books I don't have that much to say about them, and some of them I start talking and then just sort of emerge from a fugue state 45 minutes later, still somehow talking about the book. It's hard to organize my thoughts, so if I know what y'all want to hear about these books, that's really gonna help prioritize, and maybe I'll get a wrap-up to you sooner rather than later. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm sure it was wild. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!